Senator Cornyn.
Ms. Raja Kumar, it's nice to meet you. I hate for it to be under these circumstances. I certainly am sympathetic to your conundrum, and those others like you have aged out of the H-1B system. And I'd like to work with Senator Padilla on the legislation he's introduced to come up with a solution. I'm very sympathetic to not only your situation, but for the other immigrants who've come here as children, known sometimes as the Dreamers, sometimes as DACA recipients for the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrival memorandum that President Obama issued 10 years ago, which continues to be caught up in litigation, which is a reason why that sort of executive action is a bad way to do immigration reform. I voted for a bill that contained other elements, to be sure, but which provided a pathway to citizenship for 1.8 million Dreamers or DACA recipients. Unfortunately, it failed in the Senate, which has been the story since I've been in the Senate. Congress has never been successful in getting an immigration reform bill to the president's desk for his signature since I've been here. And I think that's should be an embarrassment to us all. Mr. Melman, let me ask you two questions. First, is the problem of H-1B dependents aging out a symptom of greater underlying problem with our immigration system, in your view?
Ranking Member Cornyn, yeah, absolutely. These are, for the most part, immigrants who have already established to the government that they're eligible for a green card. Their employers have already gone through a multi-year process to establish that there's no qualified and available U.S. workers. Their employers have repeatedly sponsored them for work visas, showing an ongoing need. And their communities and their employers have invested a huge amount in them. The sole reason that they are aging out is because they are caught in that green card backlog. And it falls most heavily on Indian nationals who are limited by the per country 7% limit.
Is the America's Children Act consistent with the approach that Congress has used to address these problems in the past, in your view?
When Congress, even recently as last week with EB-5, Congress historically has let me back up. There's been consensus to protect children when this has been brought to the attention of Congress. So I'll start with that. But the solutions that Congress has pursued in the past have generally focused on either, I use the term freezing the child's age at a certain date in the green card process. So even though the child will sometimes be in their 20s or 30s, is still for immigration law purposes considered a child. And other times the relief utilizes a formula to ensure that they just back out the amount of time that a case was pending with the government, which can sometimes, of course, measure years. What they didn't do is necessarily create a different path to a green card. And what I mean by that is the children continued to ride along as derivatives to their parents' green card application, as opposed to going out onto their own application for a green card. So those are just different policy decisions. Both should be considered, but you're correct, in the past it was done as where they stayed as derivatives to their parents.
Well, assuming that we can come up with a bipartisan response to this particular problem that Ms. Raja Kumar's situation exemplifies, it would require, of course, the Judiciary Committee as a whole to mark up a bill, and then Senator Schumer to bring it to the floor as the Senate is currently constituted. I know Senator Tillis and I previously had requested, when it came to the larger group of DACA recipients who've been caught up in litigation for the last 10 years, we've requested that the chairman put a bill in front of the Judiciary Committee so we can vote on it, amend it as appropriate, and if it gets a majority vote, then make it available for floor action. But unfortunately, that has not happened. Mr. Emmett, let me ask you about visa overstays. what role do visa overstays play in terms of illegal immigration in the United States?
Well, I apologize. Maybe at one point I could cite the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a significant percentage. Historically, it's been over 40% are visa overstays. I hazard a guess that that number is higher over the past few years as a percentage of the undocumented immigration. There's been efforts throughout the years to improve entry-exit tracking and have a better sense of who has overstayed their lawful status. I think that the tools that are available to the agencies today are different than they were back in 1996, which is really the last time Congress tried to tackle the question of overstays, and it's probably ripe now for review to look at that question.
Thank you.
A note before recognizing Senator Durbin, the